talk some SEC ball now with the Florida legend, Chris Doering, kind enough to join us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Chris, appreciate the time. How are you?
Hey, good to be with you, Zach. Thanks for having me.
So what's the immediate reaction, right? The news comes out yesterday. You're going to have Jon Sumrall as the new head football coach of Florida. He was introduced just a few hours ago. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the immediate reaction from Gator Nation was a bit of disappointment on Friday when the news started to break that, one, they weren't going to get Lane Kiffin, and two, that it was leading to look like it was going to be Jon Sumrall. But I think as time has passed, you've seen people kind of come full circle. You know, I know the more people that I talk to that know him, friends of mine that played with him in high school and in college, those that have been around him, you know, since he's been coaching both at Tulane and Troy, see what this guy's accomplished. They know the kind of person he is. They know what Florida needs right now, and that's somebody to rally around. You know, a lot of the criticism of Billy Napier was that he didn't show much emotion. That's quite the opposite of what Jon Sumrall is. And so I think with that, the fact that he's a winning head coach at two different Group of Five programs, and that he comes from some SEC pedigree, the fact that he played at Kentucky, he's been an assistant in this league as well. All of those things lead me to believe that this is ultimately going to be a hire. May not be the flashiest from the get-go when comparing it to Lane Kiffin, but I think flash is not necessarily what you need. Substance is what it's about. I think he's a man and a coach of a lot of substance.
Yeah, and I know when Tulane played Ole Miss earlier in the season, Lane Kiffin said it feels like Jon Sumrall is going to be a coach in the SEC next year. I think it was one of the worst-kept secrets in America. A lot of people thought it was going to be to Auburn. It ends up being Florida. So clearly you wanted Kiffin first, but if this is the consolation prize, I think it's a phenomenal one. Because I said it to his face 2 weeks ago. He's a football psycho. And I think that's something that Florida needs, is not only a coach to get them moving in the right direction, but a guy that fits the school, and his passion and his energy definitely does that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, he's all football all the time from the guys that I know that have been around him. And I do think Florida needs somebody that's going to do everything they singularly can to bring this program back to where it used to be. Because honestly, Florida's on the verge of becoming irrelevant in a lot of ways. And, you know, this is a crucial hire. I think even more importantly, or equally as important, is the hires of the coordinators, particularly the offensive coordinator. I think Coach Sumrall's got to go out and find a guy that can be extremely dynamic with an explosive offense that can score points. Because let's be honest, that's what Florida has been built upon with the success in the 90s and 2000s. And that's kind of why they all kind of gravitated towards Lane Kiffin. But, you know, obviously that didn't work out. I think you've got a guy that's a little more stable, perhaps, and you go get that up-and-coming OC that can put up some points and entertain the fan base. I think people will quickly get excited about the hire.
If Brian Kelly didn't get fired and he was still the head football coach at LSU, do you think Lane would have left Ole Miss to take the job in the Swamp?
That's a tough question. You know, I think initially it looked like, you know, Florida was going to be the destination. You know, I think there were some things that turned each side off about one another as it related to Lane about Florida and Florida to Lane. So it didn't work out. But I used that old Garth Brooks song, Thank God for Unanswered Prayers. You know, sometimes we don't get what we want in life, but we get what we need. And I think for, you know, looking at how this thing has gone down in Oxford and what's happening in Baton Rouge, might be a bullet that Florida luckily dodged.
And there's going to be a lot of Florida fans that are saying, hey, Scott Strickland shouldn't have been able to make this hire. What's your read on the athletic director from afar?
I thought, you know, on Friday when the news broke, I think there were a lot of people hearing a lot of misinformation and stories that were not accurate. In hindsight, he moved quickly to make sure he got his guy before Auburn got him. You mentioned, you know, Auburn having some interest in Coach Sumrall, and Ole Miss could have as well. He may not have been Lane Kiffin, but I think this was 1B in everybody's book in terms of the available coaches that could fit SEC openings. And Scott Strickland wasn't going to have that, you know, left out of his hands and stand there empty-handed. So I think, you know, I give him credit for making a decisive move when he had to on Friday.
Once Kiffin is off the table, clearly they pivoted to Sumrall. They get him. Some Florida fans are going to say, another Group of Five coach. What do you say to those fans that immediately dismiss it just because it's a G5 coach?
I think it's irresponsible. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that have had success at the highest level, including in the SEC, that have come from a Group of Five background. Not all Group of Five coaches are created equally, and not all Group of Five coaches bring all of their Group of Five assistants with them. And I think that's one of the key things you're going to see with this staff is it's going to be an accumulation of accomplished coordinators and assistant coaches that have some experience in the SEC that can help the acclimation process a little better. And the addition of a new general manager as well. Florida's all in, pushing in the right direction right now, and that includes with the support of the financial aspect of it, which we all know right now in building a roster requires money.
Chris Doering here with us. How did you react to this weekend? I know Florida was associated with it, but it was clear heading into the weekend, it felt like, okay, it was going to be either you stay at Ole Miss or you go to LSU. But everything that happened over that 3-day stretch with Lane Kiffin, your reaction to it was what?
Man, he milked every minute of the drama out, didn't he? I mean, it was a dramatic weekend on and off the field. I mean, think about this, Zach. We had the SEC championship participants still left up in the air until the final seconds of the final game that was being played in the SEC. Auburn and Alabama, the Tide put that great drive together to punch their ticket to Atlanta. So we used every bit of that clock, and we used every bit of the promise that we'd get an answer on Saturday, which actually rolled into Sunday for Lane Kiffin. The storylines coming out, including that Juice Kiffin's not even his real dog. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we're finding out here after the fact, and I'm sure there'll be continued release of information as we move forward.
This could be tricky because I know you played in a different era, and there wasn't NIL and there wasn't the transfer portal the way that it is today. But if you were a player in that Ole Miss locker room, would you want Lane Kiffin to continue coaching your team if he already said, hey, I'm leaving Ole Miss to go to LSU, but clearly Lane Kiffin still wanted to coach through the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have enough information to make that statement. I do know that when Ole Miss made the announcement about Pete Golding taking over, there was a large rush of excitement from all the players. I think they understand that Golding's not only a great coach, but a guy that's committed to being there in Oxford. Unfortunately, in life, there's a lot of things that we want, and, we don't get to have our cake and eat it too. I do think having Lane Kiffin on the sideline would have helped their chances of winning, but with the way this thing has gone down and the negativity that seems to be around, his departure, I don't know that you could have him on the sideline. And I give credit to Keith Carter, the athletic director, for what he's done in some decisive moves and being very definitive. I think this has actually rallied the fan base there in Oxford. I think you're going to see an overwhelming amount of support for the Grove Collective that continues to be one of the best collectives in all of college football. This was proof of concept. This is proof that Ole Miss is not some second-tier program nationally. They have the ability to win at the highest level. They are here in the playoff. Pete Golding can keep the train on the tracks. And with the financial support that I know will continue, I don't see any reason why this Ole Miss team can't compete for both an SEC championship and a college football playoff berth going forward.
And really, with something that doesn't have a dog in the fight, outside of my plus 950 ticket for Alabama to win the championship that I've had all throughout the start of the season, but as someone that doesn't have a rooting background with any of these teams that are going to make the college football playoff, I kind of want to see Ole Miss go on a run here and take it as far. And I'm curious to see what the committee's going to do. Because now they don't have their coach. I don't think they're going to drop him out of the playoff, but I think they are going to drop him, and it kind of stinks out of getting a home playoff game.
If they drop him, I think that's completely irresponsible. I mean, there's no data point that we've seen, unlike the Jordan Travis injury where we saw him play against Florida, saw him play against the ACC championship, and it was a completely different team. We haven't seen anything. In fact, I thought the team focused incredibly well on Friday with this deadline looming on Saturday. Played a really sharp game in all three phases and won decisively. I don't think there's any merit for demoting the Rebels given what they've done. They're an 11-1 team from the SEC. I think they deserve to host, and I'm excited to see what Oxford would look like with a home playoff game.
Chris Doering here with us. So my producer doesn't agree with this statement. Aaron Murray has not agreed with this statement. I think Alabama is in regardless if they win or lose in the SEC title game. Would you agree with that, or do you think they need to win to get in?
Is that because of your plus 950 ticket that has you feeling like that? Is that?
It's just 2 losses in the regular season. Last year they showed you it doesn't really matter, if you lose in the conference championship game.
I am with you. Could you imagine the committee having to look Greg Sankey in the eyes and tell him that your conference runner-up is not good enough to be in the SEC or in the college football playoff? That would not go over very well.
We'd have a 16-team playoff before this one even started, honestly.
Exactly. There is no way that's going to happen here. The SEC, when you're one of the 2 best teams in the SEC, clearly that's all that you need to say about your deservedness of playing in the college football playoff.
Chris Doering here with us. When you get to the Miami-Notre Dame debate, if that's what it comes down to, because there's a chance, right, if Texas Tech beats BYU, I think BYU is out. I don't think Texas, even though Sark made a good case, I don't think they're going to get in. It feels like there's a good chance we're coming down to this argument of Miami and Notre Dame. Who do you think should get in, and who do you think will get in?
Yeah, I mean, the regular season has to count. The fact that both teams are 10-2. I know it was way back at the end of August when this game occurred, but it's still in the 2025 season. So we have we need to be able to have head-to-head matter when you have the same exact record. And I would even make the case that like Texas may have an argument for getting in over 10-2 Vanderbilt, given the fact that they scheduled so difficultly out of the gates with Ohio State, the defending national champion in Columbus, and beating Vanderbilt head-to-head. But in this instance, with Notre Dame and Miami both being at 10-2 and Miami having won that game, there's no loss of a quarterback or coach or anything else that you can justify. They have the same record. Notre Dame lost in that game. Miami deserves to be over the Irish.
Chris Doering, what do you think of Alex Golesh going to Auburn and then Ryan Silverfield going to Arkansas?
Yeah, I don't know enough about Silverfield yet. I obviously saw them, knock off Arkansas earlier in the season. But as for Golesh, I watched him when he was here in the SEC at Tennessee as Heupel's offensive coordinator. I watched him walk into the swamp with an undermanned USF team and beat my alma mater. I mentioned it when we did the press conference shows today. Auburn needed somebody with some edge, and they went out and got a guy with some edge. I mean, this dude was born in the Soviet Union back in the day. I mean, that's all you got to say about cred right there. But I think you look at his fire on the sideline. You look at what he said today about needing to run the ball. That perked up the ears of Auburn Tiger fans. I mean, running the football is in their DNA. So I think this is a great hire for them. I know that they were kind of trying to get with Sumrall as well. But I think Golesh is a good fit for the Tigers.
When you look at Kentucky, all good things come to an end. I think it was past time to get rid of and move off of Mark Stoops, who was an incredible coach for them. What do you think is next for Kentucky? Where should they look to?
Yeah, 13 seasons, the longest tenured coach in the SEC. I have great admiration for Coach Stoops and what he did there. It took that team, that program to new heights. They were always kind of right there on the doorstep, but couldn't punch their ticket. Had a couple of chances late in the season and a couple seasons to beat Georgia to get the SEC championship game for the first time. Couldn't do it. Unfortunately, like you said, it's kind of gone in the wrong direction the last 2 years, and I think the writing was kind of on the wall. In terms of a coach, I mean, I always thought Sumrall was going to head to Kentucky, and Kentucky didn't quite, move quick enough to be able to secure a former player there. So I'm not sure where they go. But I hope that they can build on the success of what Coach Stoops created. You look at the investment, the infrastructure, their practice facility, the football facility, everything there is just top notch. I know Mitch Barnhart runs a great athletic department in general. And so finding somebody Kentucky, I don't know if you've been there, man, but Kentucky has one of the underrated football fans. Everybody thinks about them as being basketball fans, but they're very knowledgeable and very passionate and show up despite the product sometimes not being the best. So they deserve somebody that can get them back in the mix. And we're seeing it right now. If Indiana and Vanderbilt can compete for college football playoff spots, no reason Kentucky can't.
3 names came to mind. Will Stein, who's from the area. I grew up as a Kentucky fan, even though he played for Louisville. Brian Hartline, right, his brother played for Kentucky and is also on the staff right now. And then I would say Dan Mullen. Like, if he wants to leave UNLV and get back into the SEC, Dan Mullen could be a good fit for Kentucky.
Yeah, no, I would agree with all 3 of those. And I think at a place like Kentucky, it is about fit. I think it's important that you have somebody that understands, what that makeup of that dynamic is with that region in the country. But I also think you have to understand that you're going to have to share the stage with basketball, and you're going to have to share a higher split of the revenue too. And so it does take somebody a little different that is able to maybe put the ego aside.
It is actually crazy because I'll never forget. It was one of the most craziest things I had to talk about just in terms of college athletics and things that aren't serious. When Calipari years ago said they were a basketball school and Mark Stoops actually made Calipari apologize for it. It kind of showed you how good, obviously Stoops was, that you could get Kentucky, who's a basketball school, get a guy like Calipari to have to apologize for that. It really shows how good of a job that he did at that university.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, and he deserves to be appreciated. Again, kind of limped to the finish line here the last 2 seasons, but it's a guy that took them higher than anybody else has and deserves a lot of credit.
So we talk about fit, like on paper, if BYU is losing Kalani Sitake, if that happens to Penn State, I think from afar, most people are going to say, it doesn't really seem like a fit, even though I think his energy could match the energy of the AD and Pat Kraft. If that does go down, that after getting rid of James Franklin, Penn State hires Kalani Sitake, what would your thoughts be from afar?
I mean, that would be an amazing get. I think both ways. A lot of success there. Obviously, I focus a little bit more on the SEC and have not covered BYU in his stint there, but have watched from afar and seems like a very strong leader and somebody that could handle being in that bright light of that job at Penn State and the expectation level that goes along with it.
Last thing I'll ask you, just getting back to Jon Sumrall, going to your school, Florida, what do you think he needs to know? Like, if you had to tell the new Florida coach just some things about Florida to make sure that they get it right, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very passionate fan base. I think it's one that, you can see expects a lot. There hadn't been a Florida coach that's made it through 4 years since Urban Meyer left. And so he's not going to have a ton of time, man. The idea of, hey, we got to build a program, it's going to take a couple of years. The transfer portal, what other teams are doing around the country, you got to come in and hit the ground running. So I think it's so much about hiring the right coordinators and assistants, as I said, but also going out and being able to mine that transfer portal. This is a talented roster that he inherits. The question is, can he keep those guys going out and keeping Jaden Baugh, keeping Miles Graham, figuring out, how to rally not only the existing guys on the roster, but the commits that they have. That's a top 10 class right now. He's got a lot of work to do, but he needs to hit the ground running.
One last thing, Chris Doering, when you get to the SEC championship game of Georgia and Alabama, what do you think the keys are to this one?
I mean, it's all about protecting Ty Simpson. You go back to that first game, I think they completed about 68% of those third downs, including the first half where they are absolutely unconscious. If you've seen the last month of the season, that offensive line, the pass protection in general has not been very good. Ty Simpson's accuracy has gone down. So they've got to find a way to protect. I think Georgia's defense has gotten better. They're more penetrating up front. It's a fascinating matchup given the history with Kirby. I think, 1-7 against Alabama. But another opportunity to kind of change the narrative for the Bulldogs.
He's Chris Doering. Chris, hey, we really appreciate the time today. Thanks so much for doing this once
again. Thank you, man.